I'm Bob Brill. He's Eric Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill Fantasy Football Podcast, and now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Radio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. And now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. And we're going to take a look at how we did for you and look at this week's games too, and who's trending, and a brand new feature called Ask the Quarterback. Each week, we select a fan who writes in to ask Eric a fantasy football-related question. We'll bring the fan onto the video podcast to ask that question directly. Now, you could be that fan. All you have to do is email me at brillpro@gmail.com. That's brillpro@gmail.com. You can see it right there at the bottom of your screen. And just send us an email. We'll chat it up a little bit, and we'll get you on, and you can ask Eric a question. So how did we do for you? Now, we like Dak Prescott. His 502 yards and 4 touchdowns was super. Tom Brady, 5 touchdown passes. You had to like him. You liked Teddy Bridgewater. He was solid, as well as Josh Allen with 2 more TDs. Lamar Jackson wasn't great, at least not the start against Washington, but he did have a long touchdown run. And we liked Kyler Murray with 3 touchdown passes. Now, I said Deshaun Watson would come back after a slow start, and he did, but again, not a great start. He had 300 yards passing, which looks like a pretty good day for fantasy. Now, you like Joe Mixon. And all he did was go for 151, a pair of scores on the ground, and 6 catches added another score. Melvin Gordon and Dalvin Cook both went over 100, pair of TDs each. I really liked Antonio Gibson, the rookie. He had a good day. Ronald Jones rushed for 111 yards, caught 6 passes. On the receiving end, we thought Odell Beckham would pick up, and he did, albeit with 2 rushes for 73 yards and a touchdown to go along with his 5 catches for 2 more scores. Since Dak had a great day, so did Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. Mike Evans was strong, as were no less than a dozen other receivers who all went over 100 yards. Now, you love Darren Waller, who had 9 catches for 88, led all the tight ends. Trending up this week. Now, trending up, we have CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Odell Beckham, James Robinson, Joe Mixon, Melvin Gordon. Also, to Ernest Johnson, who came from out of nowhere. He gained 95 in relief of an injured Nick Chubb in Cleveland. Trending down this week, Adrian Peterson, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, David Johnson, and Nick Chubb. So give me your thoughts on the week, Eric.
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but the Browns are back. It's been a while. And I think that's in part primarily to Kevin Stefanski and his influence, not only on the team and the way he leads them, the way he guides that entire offense and defense, but especially his influence on Baker Mayfield, who I'm sure a lot of you notice, especially in fantasy football, how he's not making big turnover mistakes anymore. He's not holding on to the ball and taking sacks. He's being inefficient. He's not getting great fantasy football numbers, but in terms of wins and losses, he's doing the things necessary for his team to play consistent football and, again, not turn the ball over and always put themselves in a position to be successful. And here this week, they put up a bunch of points against the Cowboys. I think another thing that stands out to me is they kind of remind me of the Chargers, the new look Chargers this year, in that they take care of the ball. It doesn't seem to matter who is running the ball, but the offensive line does such a great job for the Chargers, but also for the Browns now. And I think those 2 teams are starting to be more consistent in putting up better numbers and wins and losses as well. The Chiefs obviously are what they are, and they're almost turning into this decade's Patriots. Remember back in the day when we used to say that Patriots have so many ways to beat you? Well, that's now the Kansas City Chiefs. They seem to have an answer for everything, including Bill Belichick and what he tried to do to them defensively. I think the one guy also, or the other team that stands out to me now lately, is the Carolina Panthers. And as you mentioned before, Teddy Bridgewater had a great game, not only passing for a couple of touchdowns, but had a very nice run, also scoring another touchdown as a rusher, because he's also a guy that gives you rushing yards. And I think he's now someone that you can rely on, especially in fantasy football, as a guy, especially if you have a quarterback that's got maybe a tough opponent. He's somebody I think you can start in the lineup and do well for you. And then Christian McCaffrey's replacement, Mike Davis, also had a good game for the Panthers, running the ball, and also provides them some receiving options as well.
Well, we had our first COVID week with the Steelers and Titans game moved to later in the year. There was a bye week, basically. So if you have your fantasy team, what you did this week is you basically, the guys that you had that would be on a bye kind of moved up. and so your bye week is going to be later. So that kind of throws things into a little bit of a flux, but it's handleable. That's for sure. This week showed one thing to me. You're going to laugh at this. If your team is loaded with players from one team, i.e. the Steelers, you really have to have some good backups. I normally have 5 Steelers in my lineup, and it's Ben, Connor, Juju, my kicker Boswell, and occasionally I'll have somebody else in there. Well, so 4 to 5 anyway. So I had to go to the waiver wire to replace my kicker, Chris Boswell. Now, I won my game, barely, but I still, because I had good backups. Now, it's something you want to really look at during this very strange period, which is why in my league, what we did was we went to 3-player IR, and I think it was a good move for our league, and I think it's a good move for other leagues to do that, because you just don't know with this COVID situation what's going to happen. Now we come to our regular feature, Ask the Quarterback. It's brand new, and today we welcome in Chris Conti, a high school teacher from Oxnard, California, who's in 4 fantasy leagues. Chris, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, been part of fantasy for quite a while, so yes, 4 teams. I don't spend a ton of time on it, but enough that I have to stay up on things. Yes, I've been a teacher for 25 years. You're seeing me in my classroom. As you see, no students. Remote learning this year. So it's a little different, a lot different for me, because I've been a teacher now for 30 years, and not having students is very difficult. But other than that, I'm very involved with sports. I'm the soccer coach here at this school, even though we might not have soccer this year. I've coached everything, you name it, in the high school.
My understanding in our pre-production meeting, you were telling me that you were also or I don't know if you still do academic decathlon too, right?
I was the academic decathlon coach for a good 10 years. So that was a non-sport event. No, I do not. I'm now the head boys soccer coach instead. I had to get it outside. That was all inside work, and I needed to get outside, and the only position open was the boys soccer coach, and I got it. So,
well, in some parts of the world, they might consider that football.
Yes. Thanks, Bob.
So what would you like to ask Eric?
Well, this weekend, I lost my number 2 quarterback, or number 2 running back in 2 leagues, Eckler for the Chargers. And my question is, I was wondering if I should pick up somebody in each of those leagues, because in one league I have Akers and Gibson as my backup on the bench. Wondering if I should just stick with one of them or look for somebody else. And in the other league, I had McKinnon and Swift as my backups. And my question is whether I should just stick with one of those guys as backups, or maybe look up a better backup out there on the free agency market.
Well, I think, in looking at this as what's going on this year, as I mentioned earlier, Chris, the Chargers, and it doesn't seem to matter who's running the ball. As your case, it was Eckler, but now that he's being replaced by Josh Kelly was already their red zone back in terms of when they got down inside the 5 or 10 yard line, he was going to be the one scoring the touchdowns anyway. So he's still going to be doing that. Now he's going to be able to get you more yards. Whether he gets the same kind of yards or numbers of yards that Eckler will, I don't know, but he's certainly a talented guy. And then Dionys Johnson also replacing another guy, Nick Chubb, who a lot of fantasy owners lost as well. Now he's going to step in and start getting a lot of those carries that Nick Chubb was getting. Obviously, Kareem Hunt's going to get some as well, but I think Dionys Johnson showed, that he's got what it takes also to carry that load.
So it looks like there are some possibilities in your league to pick up as backups?
Yes. I don't know about Kelly. I looked up, and I think Jackson was available for the Chargers, but he's the number 3. I know that. And Johnson, though, has been out there. So that might be a really good recommendation to pick up him as a.
Well, the other guy, too, is Ernest. I just forgot his name. We just talked about.
We mentioned Gibson earlier.
Yeah. And I was Ernest Johnson, who came in for Chubb. Yeah, that's who you're talking about. I think, personally, that might not be a bad pickup. I mean, this is a guy I think was probably overlooked in most leagues, right? Chris, you said he was overlooked in your league?
Ernest Johnson or Gibson? You're talking?
No, Dionys Johnson.
Or yeah, he's still out there. Johnson's still out there. I can pick him up. Gibson, as I said, I already have Gibson, but Kelly is already gone, so he's not out there.
Yeah.
So as much as I would like to pick him up to be my replacement for Eckler, I don't think I'm going to be able to get him.
This all brings up an interesting question with backups. I mean, due to the fact that, I guess, Eric, you can address this, that, it seems the last few years there's been a lot more emphasis put on wide receivers in the draft. It seems like running backs, we had a running back wasn't picked till the second round, I think. And you think that's because of the explosion of the passing game?
It's got to be. I mean, you think of basically all of the league rule changes in the past, I don't know for how long, several years, 5-10 years, have all been slanted toward helping the passing game. And so you got guys like, you mentioned how Antonio Gibson, had a great game this past week. Well, Terry McLaurin, who I had mentioned earlier going into this week, again, had another productive game. And even though, the Washington Redskins maybe aren't winning, you got guys like McLaurin that are still producing in the passing game. And I think that's, I wouldn't say the running backs necessarily are interchangeable, but when you get an offensive line that's productive, like the Chargers or now like the Browns or like the Cowboys, whoever's running the ball is going to have a good day, it seems, anyway, and has proven to be the case so far.
So, Chris, that answer your question for you?
Yes, it does.
Well, good enough. Hey, thanks for joining us on kramerandbrill.com and joining us for the segment of Ask the Quarterback and keep playing fantasy football.
No, thank you both. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Yep. Bye.
So if you'd like to ask the quarterback, just email me at brillpro@gmail.com. That's brillpro@gmail.com. You can see it right there on your screen. And if we select you, we'll be in touch to bring you on the show next week, and email, again, right there on the bottom of the page. You'll send us the email. We'll talk a little bit and get you on the show. So let's get right to this week's games. Buccaneers and Bears. Tom Brady against your Bears and Nick Foles. It's all yours.
Okay, well, the Colts, who also have a good defense, took the life out of the Bears this weekend, and Foles in particular. Now, the Bucs, again, they've got an upper-level defense as well, but I still look for the Bears' offense, which has shown some signs of life this year, to rebound. Allen Robinson still had a good game, very good game. Jimmy Graham's still going to produce. And the third guy might be Foles himself, who I think is going to rebound. And then Anthony Miller dropped a couple of passes, but I think he's always going to be there. He's a speed guy down the field, and is going to give them the potential to have some big plays as well.
Well, I like Ronald Jones as a play here, and Brady doesn't look great, but he looks serviceable. And I know we talked 5 touchdowns, but even without looking great, he did throw 5 touchdowns last week, and I got to say he's a start. Consider picking up Keyshawn Vaughn. This rookie running back is getting some playing time, so he's definitely someone you want to keep an eye on, especially in dynasty leagues. Rams Washington. The Rams looking good. Should tear Washington apart. All the receivers are a play here, as is Henderson. For Washington, I still like Antonio Gibson, but that's about it. The Rams D is good. And if you need a kicker, Hopkins is worth a look. Washington doesn't score much, and so field goals are going to be in play a lot.
Yeah, and again, I'll just go back to McLaurin. Here's a guy that's very talented, and Haskins is now, I think, being given more reign in the passing game, and it showed up last week. And even though they lost the game, they still put up good numbers. He did, especially in the passing game as far as yards go, and I think McLaurin also did. And as you said with the Rams, Goff is having such an extraordinary year. Even when
isn't he just, huh?
Game, he still has a very good game.
Bills and Titans, first post-COVID game for let's try that again. First post-COVID game. Well, I don't know why I wrote that, because it's pretty hard to say that for the Titans. So we just don't know about them to recommend anyone here, at least not enough. At least I don't. But I do say stick with Josh Allen, Diggs, and John Brown.
I agree with you as far as the Bills go. This is a machine right now, offensively, defensively. I think, though, post-COVID means nothing for me when it comes to the Titans, because they're still one of the better teams in the league. And the 4 guys that are still producing and have for the beginning of the year, I think are still going to be there. And that's Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Johnny Smith, and then Corey Davis down the field in the passing game.
Eagles Steelers, again, first post-COVID game for the Steelers, but I think they should be fine. I'd start anybody on this team. For the Eagles, they're just a mess. They're just a real mess.
Well, when you say they're a mess, they have been right up until last week. They go all the way across the country, play San Francisco. Going out there, they had no confidence. You heard Pearson talking about, Pearson, the head coach, talking about after the game. And I think the guy who has still got a fire in him is Carson Wentz. And it may not look pretty at this point, but he willed that team to win the game. And he can do it running. He can do it passing the ball. And even though he's a little off key right now, I think over time he's still going to battle himself back. And Ernst and Goddard, tight end wise, they're still the best tandem in the league.
The only thing I didn't like about that game, and you're right. I mean, he did will them back. I mean, it was like every time they got the ball, they were hoping for second or third inches because you knew what was going to happen and he was going to get it. They played a team that was just beat up. Team was missing. San Francisco's missing so many players on offense and defense, but you know, they should have. I thought they should have played better than they did. At least,
well, no doubt. I mean, San Francisco the last 2 weeks have played and stayed in New York to play both the Jets and the Giants. Then they come back home where you think they'd be dominant, and they don't get the job done. And that's, I think, a testament to how good the Eagles played. Their backs are up against the wall, facing an 0-for start, and yet they go all the way across the country and win. This week, all they're doing is going across the state of Pennsylvania, and I think they're going to give the Steelers a better game than most people think.
Cardinals and Jets. Kyler Murray coming into his own, but the Jets are not much to like here on either team. I do like Crowder on the Jets, and of course DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, and I think, even though last week the Cardinals lost the game, Kyler Murray still produces in the running game. He didn't throw for a lot of yards, but he still threw 3 touchdown passes, and he's always a threat. He's not a guy that, if I had him on my team, I'm never going to sit him against any team because he gives an added dimension. Not only in the passing game, but that added dimension he brings to the running game is phenomenal.
The Raiders and Chiefs, this is an interesting matchup. Almost anybody in either of these teams is going to get your points. So pretty much it's wide open here. Yeah,
and obviously I love Darren Waller as far as the tight end goes with the Raiders, but they have so many more weapons. And, Derek Carr's playing well, and Josh Jacobs is running the ball well, and Henry Ruggs is an option down the field. So, again, the Chiefs have weapons, so do the Raiders. This should be a high-scoring affair.
Jaguars, Texans. So, this game's an enigma. James Robinson looks like a safe bet for Jacksonville, but I'm not sure which way the Texans are going. Now, I'd like to really recommend Deshaun Watson here, and maybe this is the week, but coming off 0-4, Eric, I'm not sure his confidence is there to take this team off that losing streak. I do like Will Fuller, who has been consistent. David Johnson just does not inspire me. Now, if they can't put it together this week, I think against the Jags, I think they can pack it in for the season.
Isn't it interesting that Jacksonville, who started out white hot, and now really it's just the rookie running back, Robinson, who seems to be the consistent guy week in, week out for them. And then, as you said, with the Texans, I think Deshaun Watson, he's got to show now what Carson Wentz has shown, that even though everything else is going haywire, they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sure was not a popular decision, certainly with anybody in Houston, especially Deshaun Watson. But I think that's where he's got to come out and show what he's made of. And he has so far. To me, he's an excellent fantasy football option this year at quarterback. And I think he's going to continue to be, not only because he can pass the ball so well and he's got such a good sense of timing and rhythm, but he runs the ball and also is produces in that way as well.
I'm looking at your position from being a former NFL quarterback, and your team's 0-4, and let's put you in
I've been there before.
Yeah, exactly. Put you in Deshaun Watson's position. What's your confidence like? I mean, is it shattered to the point where, you really can't recover from this unless something happens? Or obviously you just try to plow through it and get better, but what's your mindset at this point?
Well, I think this is why me getting to the NFL was a grind and not an easy path. Deshaun Watson's path to the NFL was much different, but I think you're always going to encounter some flaws and some setbacks. And it's at those times where you have to really rely on who you are as a person to get you through. And the reason the Houston Texans are 0-4 is not Deshaun Watson. It's a lot of other factors. So I think if Deshaun just keeps playing the way he is, they're going to keep continuing to play well. He is. And then now you've got to do those little things, whether it's a short third down or scrambling for a first down, some way to get the ball down the field and continue to move the chains, continue to stay on the field and give yourself chances to score. And I think that's what Deshaun Watson has shown he's always been about. It doesn't matter if it's college or the pros. That's just basically who he is.
Let's take a look at the Bengals and Ravens. You got two words here, Joe Mixon. It's up to the Ravens to stop him, and if they don't, they've still got enough firepower to put Lamar Jackson and company over the top. So this could be a long day for Joe Burrow.
Well, I was about to say the other Joe in this game that I would rely on is Joe Burrow. He has looked flawless this year, and I mean every single game he's come out and just looked, I would say, relaxed, in rhythm, poised. He makes throws that not a lot of other rookie quarterbacks are making and makes them effortlessly, or so it seems. And that's why I think Joe Mixon is such a play, is because it's taking the pressure off of him. No one's loading up the box. They got to stop that passing game. And that's what's given Joe Mixon the room to run, along with an excellent line that is developing. They're not basically what the Browns are talent-wise, but they have a good scheme. Zach Taylor's done a great job, I think, of implementing what his experience has taught him over the years, and they're executing right now offensively.
Panthers and Falcons, and I can recommend Robbie Anderson for the Panthers, but for me, that's about it. Falcons, they're a points machine for fantasy. So no matter what their record, Ridley, Ryan, just they're for starters. That's you go down the right path with it.
Well, and I would say that I would, because the Falcons offensively are a machine, but defensively they're not a machine. In fact, they've given up a ton of points fantasy-wise to a lot of teams. And I think the Panthers now are kind of hitting their stride offensively, even though they're doing it with backups like Mike Davis. But Teddy Bridgewater finally is starting to come in and be more consistent. I think he's a guy that's just now hitting his stride. And I would definitely play both of those guys in this game if I got the Panthers.
You know, you may make me a Teddy Bridgewater fan at some point. Yet I know
well, Teddy Bridgewater is making me a fan. So if you become a fan, it's because Teddy Bridgewater is doing the job.
Well, Dolphins at 49ers. Fitzpatrick looks solid for the Dolphins, but no touchdowns last week and 2 picks. Just ain't going to cut it again, at least not for fantasy. He salvaged an okay day, had a rushing touchdown. If it were not for Devontae Parker, I don't think there'd be any offense here. I do like Parker, by the way.
Yeah, and I think this is a great game for the 49ers. Again, at home, Dolphins have to go across the country now. And I think that Nick Mullins will get back on track. Of course, he's got a great tight end in what's his name? The tight end from Iowa. Why am I drawing a blank on him? 85.
Oh, Kittle.
Kittle, right. So, yeah, I think you've got the best tight end in the game. Mullins has shown he can play, and obviously you got a running game that, even though, you know, most of it's been down, they still got plenty of guys that can fill in and play, and I think that's why they rebound this week against Miami.
You know, Kittle's probably going to slap you for forgetting his name. You know,
seems like a good guy. I doubt that's going to happen.
Personal note here. My wife's team was playing, and they were a little bit behind, and Kittle was the only guy on the other team left to play, and she goes, "Oh, why Kittle? Catch, catch."
Right.
Giants, Cowboys. Giants look like they were going to turn it around against the Rams, but Daniel Jones looked like the second-year rookie at some times, key times. I think Devonta Freeman is going to be the lead back here. So if you don't have him and he's available, grab him, start him. Wayne Gallman might be a good handcuff. I still like Slayton, and it's a boomer bust scenario for him. But for the boys, Gallup might be soon replaced by Cedric Wilson, who I do like. Even with a fumble to his credit, Zeke scored 20 fantasy points, and CeeDee Lamb's a player. I love him in all leagues, especially dynasty leagues.
Well, and I think, okay, just to talk about the Cowboys for a second, Dak Prescott, I think has really, I mean, these last few weeks, really every game this year, has shown that, you know, fantasy owners can rely on him. He is making the most of not just the weapons around him, but I think the offensive line has come in and played great for him. They've opened holes in the running game. Zeke Elliott benefited from that as well. as you mentioned, everybody that is a weapon in Dallas is producing primarily because of Zach Prescott and that offensive line.
Yeah, he has been really, really coming on. I mean, again, I refer to my wife's team. That's her lead guy, and she keeps asking me, should I start? Ride him. You got to ride him. He scored in our league, because it's a heavy quarterback league. He scored 61 points. A week before, he scored 49. So, yeah, you got to ride this guy.
Yeah.
Colts and Browns. This game is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So watch the injury wires with Nick Chubb. He went down early. And that means to Ernest Johnson, who we talked about earlier, is a pickup, 95 yards rushing. Beckham now looks to be the go-to Baker Mayfield guy we thought he was going to be. And based on last week's performance, there isn't really, for me, an indie player I can suggest.
And I think you're right. I think offensively, the Colts now have identified themselves as, we're going to ride this defense. We're going to, run the ball effectively, that like Jonathan Taylor has. They may not score a lot of points, but they played the Bears defense last week, right? So the Browns defense isn't the Bears defense. So I think, the Colts may produce more points, but it's really hard to tell who's going to be doing it. And I think, the Browns, though, have really shown me that they're going to score points. And running the ball, they're going to be fantastic. Defensively, they're now picking their game up. Passing the ball, they're going to be effective. They might not get great fantasy points. It's kind of a roll of dice. Who's going to be the guy? Will it be Beckham? Will it be Landry? Will it be their tight ends? I think, because right now it's hard to tell offensively, it's hard to pick a balanced player to bank on in fantasy football.
Broncos Patriots, loving Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick all day long. Melvin Gordon, he's the man on the ground. Brett Rippon, despite 3 picks, looked decent. Now, I don't think I'd go out and buy him. I wouldn't rush to do that, at least not in Denver, because you never know what the quarterback's going to be or who's going to be or who they're going to pick up off the street.
Yeah, and I think this week, especially against the Patriots, even though the Patriots are going to be coming off a short week, haven't played on Monday night, Belichick, they're at home. He can devise a defense that seems to slow down pretty much anybody. And as you said, Brett Rippon, to me, showed me he's going to be a good quarterback, a very good quarterback in this league. But this is only week 2 for him as a starter. And so I think he's going to continue maybe to make some throws he maybe wish he would have had back. But that's the kind of thing that's going to hurt you in terms of fantasy when you have the interception. You can't really take it back once it's made.
Vikings Seahawks, both Thielen and Jefferson, solid starts, along with Cook and Cousins. For the Seahawks, Chris Carson came back sooner than expected, had 80 yards, also had 3 catches, so I'd ride him. And, of course, Wilson, Metcalf, and Lockett are starters. David Moore quietly coming along as well, so he's a definite consideration if you can get him. Now, it's a crowded receiving core, but in deeper leagues, that's someone you may want to keep an eye on.
Think about this for a second. When's the last time we said about the Seattle Seahawks that they had all of these weapons offensively?
Never. All healthy.
So, right, they've been a great defense over the years, a consistent and solid running game. But now it's Russell Wilson throwing the ball all over the place. And as you said, here comes David Moore, no one's ever heard of. But Metcalf and Lockett are obviously great targets. And then Wilson himself is a dual threat guy that can run it and throw it. So that's the Seahawks are loaded. But as you said, also the Vikings, in my opinion, just watching them play, Cousins is consistent. Now their offense is kind of settling in and relying on him to make plays and be a little bit more creative, as the announcers have talked about from week to week. And he's showing he can do that. And I think that's why I like everyone on the Vikings offense as well.
The Vikings defense has been really inconsistent, though. I think that opens up a lot more for Seattle, unless the Vikings defense comes to play this week.
I agree with you. And that's going to be, and has been so far, why the Vikings, haven't had maybe the season that they anticipated they would. They've got good players on defense, but they just, as a unit, have not put it together yet.
Chargers Saints. Now, I do like Herbert, but he's still learning. And I think he's going to get schooled this week watching Drew Brees. Eckler got hurt. He'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. So look at Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson. Jalen Guyton had a 72-yard touchdown catch on only 1 target. So he might be iffy there. That may excite you when you look at the waiver wires and stuff, but, be careful there. Emmanuel Sanders finally getting going for the Saints. Murray is a good insurance handcuff for Kamara at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But I think that, Herbert all along, even from the, 15 seconds before he knew he was going to start to the time he started in that first game that he played, I think he continues week after week. Hell, he had the shootout with Tom Brady. So I think Drew Brees, it's going to be an education, obviously, for him and probably leading up to this game. But once the game starts, it's all about what he does as a quarterback for the Chargers. And so far, he's been, in my opinion, outstanding, especially getting his first, few games here as a rookie. And again, they're one of the better offenses and defenses in this league. And I think offensively, you owe a lot of that to the offensive line and the way they've meshed and played together. And obviously the way they call plays has been spectacular.
And there you have it, Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, now a video cast as well. Now you can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, libsynradio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. And now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way to do it. And don't forget about our brand new feature, Ask the Quarterback. Each week we will select a fan who writes in to ask Eric a fantasy football related question. We'll bring the fan onto the video podcast, ask the question directly. You can be that fan. All you have to do is simply email us at brillpro@gmail.com. That's brillpro@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.